The sound of the blacksmith's hammer striking hot metal on a cold anvil was a sound Michigan's early pioneers grew quite accustomed to. It was an essential part of the development of the westward movement, a vital part of all forms of transportation. From the forging of horseshoes to wagon wheels, the early blacksmiths were counted on to be there to keep it going. Long gone are those days when if you didn't have a town blacksmith, you yourself had to become one. Modern-day transportation and huge metal forging plants with ultra-sophisticated presses have replaced much of the hand forging, but not completely. There's still a select group of romanticists who keep the art form of blacksmithing alive, more for pleasure and artistic expression than necessity. Early one recent sunny summer morning, Michigan Magazine had the pleasure of attending a get-together of blacksmiths at beautiful Hartwick Pines State Park near Grayling. Here, amongst one of Michigan's only remaining virgin white pine stands, blacksmiths from throughout the Midwest began setting up their anvils and stoking their fires during the park's annual Black Iron Days, one of the many lumbering era events the park is the site of each year. Here, while the big wheels passed and the dulcimer band played, the sounds of hammers hitting anvils began to fill the air. The crowds of fascinated spectators began to arrive. People of all ages were observing true artists at work, forging hard metal into pieces of beauty and practicality. We visited with blacksmith Lyle Cline of Mile. Lyle is a high school history teacher at Mile High School who first caught the blacksmithing bug on Mackinac Island back in the early 80s. Lyle shared with us that day some of the history of blacksmithing and his fascination for it.
If we go back historically, previous to the Industrial Revolution, blacksmiths, even then, making all the tools and so forth, were craftsmen, and you could recognize a certain person's work by style, and so there was even an art form then. But as factories began to make all of his tools, the blacksmith became more of a repairman. He became more of the farrier that people normally think about. When they think blacksmith, they think horseshoer.
Right.
And here today, what you'll see is no horseshoeing at all. What you'll see is all the ironwork, mostly here from purely artistic to functional forks, hooks, all kinds of things that blacksmiths would have made.
So in the early days, when it was more of a necessity to get you on your way transportation-wise, now it's more of a specialty type ornamental, or...
Right, ornamental more so than it was in the past, yeah. I think that blacksmithing probably was at its low point in the late 60s, but then as the 70s, we, sort of the back to the land and the simpler lifestyle, Mother Earth news kinds of things, they started to make a comeback. Most of the fellas here are hobby smiths, so they're fellas that do it as just a love. I stood in front of the blacksmith on Mackinac Island's museum shop one day for 4 hours and caught the bug, so, and I've been working at it ever since.
So that's what got you into it, as a matter of fact.
Yes, it did.
How long ago was this now?
82, about 12 years ago now.
Goodness.
Yeah.
And it's not that a lost art. I mean, there are a lot of enthusiasts, isn't there?
Yes, it's coming back. You can tell by the price on tools at flea markets and auctions. They've started to creep up, and so it's definitely coming back, and not to the degree yet that some of the woodworking crafts and so forth have, but it's certainly on the plus side, and we're looking forward to that.
Right. What is the attraction for you? What drew you? I know you caught the bug, but what is the bug?
Well, I would say that steel is a unique medium to work in that so rigid and cold, sort of when it's literally cold, but you put it in the fire, raise it to a forging temperature, and you can really get a magic out of it. There are certain things that we can do with the steel. There's a pattern we call diamond twist, in which you groove the steel, twist it, square it up, re-groove it, and untwist it, and you just see these points leap out of it, and it's just kind of got a life of its own, But the creative aspect, as a school teacher, sometimes I don't have that channel for myself as a person, as much as I would like, but this gives me sort of a therapy and a way to really kind of express me. I think that's probably true of most of the fellows. Unfortunately, there's no place where we have a true apprenticeship type program anymore. You have to acquire various places. Here at gatherings like this, I try to get around and see what the other guys are doing, sort of pick their minds, learn new tricks and so on. And it's been a tremendous experience. That's one of the great things about the new smiths, the hobby smiths that are out there. They'll share anything with you. In the old days, it was your livelihood, and you kind of protected some of your secret tricks.
Right.
But now it's really a great fraternity, really, of guys.
So it's more or less you got to take a look at what other people are doing and ask questions.
Right.
There's no set school or apprenticeship that's learned nowadays.
Right. That is correct.
I see. And they're pretty much the network that you do have amongst the blacksmiths are pretty close people.
I think so, yes. Very friendly group. Not met a single one that won't sit down and talk with you about something that they're doing.
You said the Mackinac Island events. Now, there's a practical purpose to that. I mean, the blacksmiths get together and they actually do something for the island.
Right.
Up there, right?
We began approximately 10 years ago of making the fish weather vane that's on the officers' quarters in the fort. And since then, it's been a variety of projects. We spent about 6 years, that sounds like a lot, but that was on a weekend in August, making a wrought iron fence for the front of that shop. This year we forged some cannon parts and a new bench for that site. So we get a chance to display and demonstrate our work, but also create things that whoever visits at whatever time to Mackinac Island will be able to see those pieces of ironwork.
You do blacksmithing at your home, of course.
Yes,
but
I
when
do.
you get to places like this and you hear the anvils and the hammers hitting the iron, it kind of brings you back kind of a nostalgic feeling, doesn't it?
Well, that's, I guess, part of the fact I'm a history teacher, and that was one of the things which sort of, transported me back in time in a way. As you look around here, you will see some modern things, maybe some plastic buckets being used for water, but for the most part, we endeavor to do the things the way that they would have been done at the turn of the century, let's say.
Right. When you first got into the more or less of a hobby for you at first, was there any misconceptions that you had when you got into it that you learned that had to be relearned in your mind?
Oh, I think a whole gamut of things, but nothing in particular that I think some, like the trick of forge welding, of heating the iron in that fire and bringing the two pieces together and with hammer blows forging it into one piece. That was a real experience for me the first time I did it.
But when you look at it from my standpoint, looking at it from a romantic look at the past, and then you realize that there was a lot of work. These people
much
were
more
very...
so than, yes, that's probably true. There are some of the fellows that in their home shops have power hammers, which do go back into the late 1800s, but the amount of work to transform larger pieces, as the dimension of the steel increases, the amount of effort goes along with it, even though it's still very warm, very hot.
Now, blacksmith of your stature, say, how big of an object can you form? Is it a limitless type of forging that you can do?
Well, usually the moving it about is the problem.
That's the big problem.
You can, in most cases, heat up a pretty good sized piece, but to forge it with just an anvil that I have here and a 2-pound hammer, or even using sledgehammers with a striker, can make it a pretty substantial piece of work. We did on Mackinac Island again an andiron set out of 2-inch square steel, and that was about as much as we wanted to work with in conditions like most of us have.
Are there a lot of different tools that a blacksmith utilizes nowadays?
An enormous number. You'll make all kinds of them. Most of my work is done with the same hammer, maybe a half a dozen pairs of tongs and so on. But every time that you do a new project, you nearly always are looking at some new type of chisel or punch or some type of tongs to hold the work or something like that. But then you always have that if you do something like it again.
You've been at it since '82. Where do you plan on taking your hobby? Any aspirations?
Yeah, I would like to, I'm looking at retirement from teaching down the road in a couple of years, and I would like to make this more of a full-time job, but not totally that. I would like to begin to do more architectural pieces, railings and gates and things like this, rather than the smaller pieces. Just sort of a challenge for me, because that starts to, the size of the project becomes presents its own unique problems.
No, bet it does. Well, Lyle Cline from Straight Arrow Forge, Mile, thank you very much for taking time, and we're going to take
It's a pleasure to see you here. Thank you.
Black Iron Days was a great success that weekend, as seems to be the case at all of the special lumbering era events held regularly at Hartwick Pines State Park near Grayling. While the blacksmiths practiced their arts, other period craftspeople demonstrated their talents that day, including lumbering demonstrations with an old-time sawmill. It was a step back in time again as the sights and sounds of a bygone era in Michigan filled the air. Michigan history comes alive again at another fine Michigan State Park.